As we get settled and bring our guests to our tables, I'm wondering if you can stop and join me to give our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And guests and members, please join me in reciting our statement of high ethical standards, our four-way test. Of the things we think, say, or do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you. And now I'd like to invite Mary Penny, CFO with the Quiet Companies, for our Rotary Inspirational Moment. Mary?
Thank you, President Jim. Rotary's motto is service above self. We have a dynamic Rotary Club full of service opportunities. This weekend at the Peach Sale, there were many Rotarians and their families helping to organize and load boxes of peaches into the cars that came through. The atmosphere was very fun and full of camaraderie. At the World Community Service meeting this week, we heard about the Guatemala Literacy Project, a project that Rotary has sponsored for over 15 years. This project provides books, computers, teachers to educate underprivileged Mayan children in rural parts of Guatemala. It's a life-changing opportunity for these students to learn to read and write in Spanish and in English. Our club is involved in many local service projects: Denver Kids, Shining Stars, Global Water Challenge, RILA, and many more. If you haven't had a chance to get involved in the club service projects in the past, put it on your list for this coming year. It will change your life and build new relationships. Albert Schweitzer has a quote about service. "I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will be really happy are those who have sought and found how to serve." So get involved and have a great time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mary. Kristi?
Thank you, President Jim, and happy Thursday, everyone. I would like to start my report by welcoming all of our guests and visiting Rotarians. When I call your name, if you could go ahead and stand at your place with your host, that would be terrific. I'd like to start with visiting Rotarians. We have John Altland visiting us from Golden. John, nice to see you. We also have Francie Anhut from the Boulder Club. Francie, there she is. All right, and our guests. A guest of Alice Bulwinkle is Steve Werner. Steve, nice to see you. Curly Sawyer is a guest of Bob Sawyer. Curly, welcome. Good to see you. Andy Klatskin is a guest of Rusty Wilkins. Thank you for joining us. And Kayla Albertson is a guest of Jamie's. Kayla, nice to have you. And then also we have two guests from Larry Boning who both have ties to Ike. So just want to take a second to talk about that. Dave Lively is the president of Historic Fraser, where Eisenhower fished and painted. Dave, where are you? There you go. Thank you for sharing that with us. And then Tom Morton, Canadian Air Force retired, is now the historian for the Fairmount Cemetery, where one of Eisenhower's sisters was buried. Son. Thank you very much. Welcome. All right, and again, I'd like to draw your attention to the screen. We have lots of birthdays this week, so if you have someone sitting with you that is celebrating another year, please go ahead and wish them a happy birthday. And this week, for our mission moment, I'd like to highlight one of the projects where we have financial support and a lot of volunteer support as well. This week, we're highlighting Shining Stars, which Mary actually talked about in her inspiration moment. The Shining Stars Foundation brings hope to children with cancer and life-threatening diseases through year-round support, recreation, and social programs to help them gain self-confidence, physical endurance, independence, and self-determination. Most importantly, this organization works to instill the will to live in young people. Last year, the organization served 4,625 clients through 48 events, thanks to 350 volunteers. The Club 31 Foundation approved a $3,000 grant this year for Shining Stars to support the Aspen Winter Games, the Aspen Summer Adventure, and the Grand County Summer Adventure Family Camp. In addition, numerous Rotarians volunteer at these events, as well as Zoo Day and Holiday Party. And if you'd like more information on how to get involved with this outstanding effort, you can contact Rotarian Jim Wilkins. And then finally, our announcements. We still need volunteers for the Zone Institute. District 5450 is hosting the Institute from September 9th through the 14th at the Westin Hotel in Westminster. And we need Rotarians to actually help transport visitors from the airport to the Westin. If you would like to volunteer, please go ahead and visit the Rotary 54 website. Also, save the date. We have a fellowship coming up on Thursday, September 4th, and you'll be getting information on who is hosting. I know I'm hosting up at JA Finance Park, if you'd like to come learn more about that. Also, you can join us at Rotary Connect Happy Hour, which is taking place Tuesday, August 26th at Hacienda, Colorado at I-25 in Colorado Boulevard from 5:30 to 7:30. And we'd like to thank Lonnie Langston and Action Coach for sponsoring that event. And then finally, if you would keep a family Rotary in your thoughts, former longtime member Blaine Chase's wife, Lorraine, passed away on August 7th. So if you could please keep the Chase family in your thoughts and prayers, that would be terrific. Thank you. President Jim.
Thank you, Kristi. I just also wanted to put in a quick plug for all of those volunteers who helped out at the Peach Day on Saturday. It was a great day. We had a great breakfast, and I hope you're all continuing to enjoy those peaches. If you need a recipe for cobbler, I happen to have one. Also wanted to mention that Young Cho is putting together a golf tournament that's next Monday, and we had a number of people cancel this week, and so we need a few more people. So if you are a golfer and you have Monday afternoon off, it's going to be a wonderful time at Pinehurst Country Club, and then cocktails at Young's house right along the fairway of one of the holes. It's a beautiful place, so hopefully you can join us. Now at this time I'd like to ask Bob Sawyer to come up on the stage, and while he's making his way, I'm going to talk a little bit about him. But it appears as though Kristi took my notes. Thanks, Kristi. Well, all of you know Dr. Bob, and what you may not know, I hope to tell you today. This is a celebration of 50 years of perfect attendance. And what does that mean? Well, that means that Bob has been extremely engaged in Rotary for 50 years. And in those times when he couldn't make it to these meetings, he was making up either at other clubs or even online. And we're very pleased to hear that you're a part of that E-Club in some way. But I thought I'd just mention a few things, and I say a few because his resume is so long, it would take us most of the afternoon to go through it. So I wanted to just mention a few things, give him a couple of memories, awards, and also hand it over to him for him to say a few words as well. Bob was first introduced to Rotary on August 6, 1964 by his sponsor and father, Dr. Kenneth Sawyer. In the early years, Bob worked together with people like Jim White on social activities, including the Serious About Fun Club, which I don't know much about, but I'd love to hear more, the Rotary Picnic at Elitch's, and the annual Valentine's Sweethearts Dance. Jim White chaired a lot of these events, but Bob and his wife, Curly, who is here, were always there helping to plan and make sure everything went right. Bob also served 20 years on the Artists of America program. Not only does Bob have 50 years of perfect attendance at Denver, but he's also been extremely active during that time. He served 2 terms on the Denver Rotary Club Board of Directors from 74 to 76 and 97 to 99, and on the Board of Directors of the DRCF, our foundation, from 77 to 79. He's earned a number of honors, including DRCF Fellow, Paul Harris Fellow +2, and last year, you may recall that he was awarded the District Les Bevins Pace Setter Award for outstanding vocational service to the community. He was born and raised in Denver, where he attended Garland, Maury, and East High School. He has a BA from the University of Colorado, go Buffs, and attended the University of Colorado School of Medicine. But in addition to Rotary, Bob has contributed enormous amounts of time to the Colorado health community and to other charities. In particular, I can say personally that he's been a wonderful volunteer for 9 Health Fair. Since very early in the organization's development, in particular as an active member of our Medical Advisory Committee since 1985. In acknowledgement of his contribution in 2002, the Health One Alliance and the Colorado Medical Society honored his service and commitment by initiating the first Dr. Bob Sawyer Health Education Forum. The forum is now an annual series of lectures or discussions about health topics, fostering better health for both youth and adults. He also served on our Board of Trustees as president from 1999 to 2001, as secretary from 93 to 95, and he was a trustee from 1987 to 2004. He's also contributed to many, many other health-related organizations. I had a long list that I just couldn't go through, but I wanted to mention at least his service as on the board of directors of Webb Waring Lung Institute, the Denver Medical Library, and Bonfils Blood Center from 2006 to the present. He's had a very long relationship with Presbyterian St. Luke's Medical Center, and I just learned that 14 days ago he finally retired as the director of the wound care center there. So he's going to be able to be at our meetings, he said, maybe even early. He also, of course, was involved in the subsequent Health One affiliation. He was chair of the board of the Health One Foundation, chair of the board of the Health One Alliance, and in honor of his commitment to that organization, he was also named emeritus director of the Colorado Health Foundation. In spite of turning, did you turn 81 this year, Bob? I hope that I can work until 81. I may have to because I've got kids going to college very soon. But he's been a wonderful contributor to all kinds of medical-related organizations, and I wanted to also mention that he was, while a practicing physician, he was also dedicated to volunteering for such entities that advanced the practice of medicine, such as president of the Colorado chapter of the American College of Surgeons from 1986 to 87, and is still a fellow of that organization. He was president also of the Colorado Medical Society from 1978 to 79. Now, outside of health, and medicine, he also has earned some other very prestigious awards, including his work with the University of Colorado Medical Alumni Association, both the Silver and Gold Award in 2005, and was given a Lifetime Achievement Award from the Denver Medical Society in 2008. Also of note, those of you who are Boy Scouts, Bob received America's Silver Beaver Award in 1980. I believe that's their highest honor. Additionally, he has served our community as a trustee and officer of the Denver Zoo on the Board of Trustees starting in 1969 on their foundation. And he became an honorary life trustee in 2006. Most recently, he was awarded, as nominated by 9 Health Fair and Bonfils Blood Center, the honor of the Harold E. Williamson Award from the Board of COPIC. I'd like to give Bob a chance to talk a little bit about his service at Rotary, and I want to thank you, Bob, for everything that you do. And before you take the microphone, I wanted to present you a couple of things. One of them is a plaque that is represented up on the screen here, kind of showing your evolution in terms of your modeling career for Rotary, starting in the 1960s through 2000. So that's something you'll be able to put on your wall. In addition, I wanted to show this beautiful box that has the Rotary insignia on the front and says, honoring Dr. Bob B. Sawyer in recognition of devotion to Rotary and its principles as exemplified by 50 years of perfect attendance and 50 years of membership from the Rotary Club of Denver, 1964 to 2014. There's a very special pin that I'm going to give to you right now. You don't mind if I put it right there, do you? Okay. And let's thank Bob for all of his years of service.
Well, thank you all very much. I'm kind of touched by all of this. In 1964, I'd finished my residency, spent 2 years in the service, came home to Denver and wanted to go to work. My dad says, well, I want you to join Rotary, and I want you to make sure you go to the meetings. Well, the last thing I wanted to do was to join a club, and I wanted to go to work, and I had 5 kids. I had to raise them. Well, as you know, my father was a very determined person, so I found that joining Rotary did more than just a club. It opened an adventure in the community for me, which allowed me to participate in so many things of community activities, whether they were political, philanthropic, and all those things across Denver that have made me very proud to be a Rotarian. So Rotary's meant a great deal to me over all the years, and I can't thank you enough for. And now I got a pin. I had a Rotary pin on all of my suit coats. Now I've got one with a special diamond in it, and I got to switch it from coat to coat. Now when I go around, it's going to be difficult. Thank you all for everything you've done for me. For what I've done for Rotary is minuscule to what it's done for my heart and family and life.
We'll also have some cake served. There's a small cake in representation of that, but that'll be coming out very soon.
I don't know what Curly's going to say to this.
Thanks again, Bob. All right, now I'd like to bring to the stage our newest member, Bill West, and his sponsor, Don Lewis. Don will take the podium and tell us a little bit about Bill. Come right up, Don.
Please meet my friend, Chalmer William West, Jr., also known as Bill from now on. 3 themes come to mind when you look at Bill's background: Midwest, music, and multi-talented. Midwest because he grew up and graduated from college in Evansville, Indiana. He then went to work for the Salvation Army and was a member of 2 different Rotary clubs in Illinois. He then moved on to Indiana and Michigan to work in radio and newspaper news. In Detroit, Bill worked as a copy editor for the Detroit Free Press and at the same time earned a law degree from the Detroit College of Law. This led to commercial legal positions in various points in the Midwest, including Norwest. And in 1991, we were lucky enough to have Bill transferred out here by Norwest Bank to become Deputy General Counsel for the Western region of Norwest. That subsequently became Wells Fargo, of course, and Bill has since retired from the active practice of law. Music and writing have played an important role in Bill's life, both professionally and personally. Skills that stood him in good stead at the Salvation Army, where he performed music, newspapers, radio, churches, and skilled music groups of various types. I was recently exposed to his skills at his wife's birthday party, where he sang the harmony part to Happy Birthday. He selected and played about 5.5 hours of music for the group, and then composed a poem in iambic pentameter in celebration of that birthday. So I mentioned multi-talented. Multi-talented because he creates DVD movies, he plays golf, chess, bridge, and he actively gardens as well. He's been active in Westminster, where he lives with his wife Judith Ann and 2 cats. And his activities in Westminster have included service on the Butterfly Pavilion Board for many years, and also service on the Homeowners Association Board for several years. President Jim.
All right, Bill, thank you so much for your interest in Rotary. It's my honor as president and member of the board of directors of the Rotary Club of Denver to welcome Bill West to Rotary. Bill, Rotary is a worldwide organization of business and professional leaders who provide humanitarian service, encourage high ethical standards in all vocations, and help build goodwill and peace. You've been invited to join and have been accepted by the membership of the board of directors of the Rotary Club of Denver to become a member of the most prestigious service organization in the world. You were selected because you and we Rotarians hold in common the values of service, leadership, integrity, fellowship, and diversity. We invite you to explore service opportunities, help with our organizational work, and start networking with your fellow Rotarians. Once you take those actions, you will discover the true essence of Rotarians, people who place service above self. Thank you for making this pivotal decision to begin your Rotary journey in the Denver Club 31. We are already the longest standing and largest Rotary Club in the state of Colorado. Our role now is to engage your passion, and together we must focus our efforts so that our club can reach its maximum potential. Thank you, Don, for inviting and inspiring Bill. Denver Rotarians, fellow Rotarians, please stand and help me welcome our newest member, Bill West. Now I'd like to invite Alice Bulwinkle, president of our Denver Rotary Club Foundation, to introduce a person, Steve Werner, and present a check. Alice, come on up. And Steve? You'll mention who he's from.
Sorry?
You'll mention who Steve is.
In May, I spoke to you about the Denver Rotary Club Foundation and our goals for this year. One of the goals of the Grants Committee this year was to identify new projects to fund. Today, I have the pleasure of giving a check to the project they selected. The Denver Southeast Rotary Club presented their project, the Center for Teaching International Relations, and I feel that this grant really fulfills a lot of our goals all in one grant. Our goals are centered on youth and education and peace, and it sounds to me as though we're going to get some information about that from Steve. So Steve Werner, here's our check.
Thank you so much, Alice.
And I'll leave it up to you.
Okay. Well, first off, a big thank you to Denver 31 for your support of the Center for Teaching International Relations. I'm a past board chair and a current board member and fundraising chair for CTIR. And so you all have helped in ways beyond the actual dollar amount. I want to be brief because General Carl Riddel spoke to Denver Southeast this morning, so I know you're going to have a great program, and I don't want to cut into his time. But I do want to just ask one quick question. Raise your hand if you'd like to find the Fountain of Youth. Anybody here want to find the Fountain of Youth? Well, we hope you'll come out and be a judge for the World Affairs Challenge. This is a competition we have for middle school and high school students to come and tell us how they would solve a current world issue. Last year we had a theme on water. This year it's going to be on gender and development. While it sounds like what we're trying to do is teach about international studies, and by the way, Dan Lutz served on our board and we work closely with DCIS, which I know you all work closely with as well. It's really trying to motivate kids that have struggled in school to find something that they're passionate about. We have many examples of that because teams of students come, they work all year long. We ask them to also present within their school, so it goes beyond the team that comes and competes, and they also develop a service project. So I'll just use one quick example in closing, and I brought some literature that's on the side table if you want to know more about CTIR and the World Affairs Challenge. But the example we have many examples, but the best one's from Rifle, Colorado, because this is a statewide project. We have a lot of schools in Denver public schools that participate, including DCIS. But we are a statewide project, and we work closely with many Rotarians, and I would take all my time if I thanked individuals who volunteer for us. But the Rifle High School team the Rifle High School had a graduation rate of 40%, and the team that came and participated were all handpicked by the teacher because they were really struggling in school. Well, they came that year and competed against some very well-known schools in the Denver area, and they ended up winning when they had to be cajoled by their teacher to come and compete. The thing that was so impressive, though, about the team is they finished their presentation, and that year the theme was on world hunger. They said, we can't do much about world hunger from Rifle, but we can do something about hunger in Rifle. So they organized their whole high school to do a citywide food drive, and they replenished their local food bank. And all of those team members who were struggling in school ended up graduating that year, and half of them went to college. And the last point of the story is that the other half of the team that didn't didn't go to college, they did fundraisers to help the team members that went to college generate scholarship money. So my point is this project goes well beyond the educational benefit. It motivates kids to be lifelong learners, and your support's going to help us to grow the program. So thank you, and please consider becoming a judge. Grab some literature, talk to Sue Fox, who's been a judge for many years, and we really appreciate both your volunteer help and your financial support. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Alice.
Thank you, Steve. And now I'd like to invite Jim White to the podium to talk with us a little bit about perfect attendance and what that means in Rotary. Jim?
Thank you very much, President Jim. I'm here to recognize those of us who have had perfect attendance over the last year and previous years. I think we don't need to do too much more than take a look at Bob Sawyer, and I'm going to ask you as I read your names to stand and remain standing so we can recognize all of the perfect attenders. But Bob, you don't have to stand. We're going to start with Bob. He's the perfect attendance king with 50 years. Just wave your hands, Bob. And the rest of us, I just want to let you know that you can make up Rotary in any one of 33,000 clubs worldwide. You're always welcome, and you'll find it to be the best experience, one of your best Rotary experiences, if you'll just make up some of those meetings. So I'd like to start this year. We're doing something a little bit different. I notice here that the club office has listed the names of all of the new members if you've had perfect attendance since joining, as well as the ones with 1 year. Now, you won't get the 1-year sticker, but let me read all those names. And stand and remain standing, please, as I read this whole list. There are 25% of our members. That's 75 of us. So let's start with the ones with 1 year or perfect attendance since joining. Lucas Ashby, please stand if you're here and just remain standing. Mark Bellinger, Delba Bill Meyer, Brian Blankenberg, Allison Clark Hardesty, Julie Freshman, Sean Gadsden, Jim Goddard, our president, of course. The presidents always have perfect attendance. Lonnie Kendall, Jeff Kraft, Brian Kruger, Jody Mobb, Allison Oyster Mitch, Mary Penny, Chris Peters, David Pitchford, Sandy Rootson, Lindsay Schmitz, David Schrader, Virgil Scott, Kristi Shaffer, Kate Strauss, Tim Sweeney, Juan Valdez, Andre Van Hall, Bill West, Jim Wilshire, and Meekin Ziegler. Now remain standing. That's how you start. If you aren't here for a full year yet, just keep on going, and you'll be here for many, many years. Now keep standing, and we'll add those with 2 years perfect attendance: Mark Donovan, Carter Sales, Adam Yu. And with 3 years perfect attendance: Valerie Hopkins, Lonnie Langton, Jim McGibney, Rich Sprong. With 4 years: Pam Adams, Todd Bacon, L. Berger, Don Lewis. Now you'll notice that many of these low-year perfect attenders have been in the club for many years and maybe have had perfect attendance for many years before. But if you miss a meeting and don't make it up, then you go back to 0. So, just keep on making up those meetings. With 5 years, we have John Finnegan, Debbie Kaufman, Bob Loudermilk. 6 years, Mitch Benedict, Warren Donder, Jack Green, Bob Heiserman, Seth Patterson, and Gary Shrink. 7 years, perfect attendance: Nancy Austin, Wynn Gandera, Will Schneider, our Sergeant at Arms. 8 years, we have Harriet Downer, Doug McLemore. 9 years, Don Schloop, John Stewart, Pete Wall. Now with 10 years perfect attendance, and this is kind of a milestone: Larry Gloss, Phil Goddard, Peg Johnson, and Charlie Miller. 11 years, Brian Geis and Steve Mast. 12 years, Chuck Everall. 13 years, Frank Lawrence. The next milestone: 20 years perfect attendance: Carl Berg, John Klug, and Mike Muftick. 25 years, Ved Nanda. 27 years, we have Young Cho and Rod Greiner. And with 29 years, Grant Wilkins. If you'd all stand and remain standing, we're almost down to the end. With 40 years, Fred Taylor. And 43 years, of course, myself, Jim White. And then a gentleman who's not here, who passes Bob Sawyer. With 56 years, our true granddaddy of perfect attendance is Phil Pankey. So congratulations. Let's give us all a round of applause. Thank you very much.
All right, Grant, I'm going to call you to the stage to introduce our speaker. I think you'll really enjoy this. I had a chance to talk with our speaker today, and there's going to be a lot of really interesting information. Grant?
Thanks, President Jim. It's been my pleasure to know Carl Riddel for about 25 years. He was the first U.S. Air Force officer allowed in Russia when the Iron Curtain was up. In 1975, he spent a year or so at Moscow State University learning the Russian language. When I met him, he was head of the history department at the U.S. Air Force Academy. He was Rotary's Russian expert. Early on, he spoke at this club a long time ago, at district conferences, at zone institutes, and all over the world. I had the pleasure of working with him in Russia on the Russian Health Task Force that we formed way back when Jim Lacey was our world president, and we were trying to zero in on Russia's multi-problems of epidemics of tuberculosis, HIV, AIDS, hypertension, what have you. Carl was a huge help because he was fluent in the Russian language. We've been over there many times since then, starting new Rotary clubs and one thing or another, but he has been a tremendous Rotarian over the years. Now he heads the Eisenhower Memorial Commission. He's executive director, and he's been asked to recommend to our U.S. Congress, yes, that Congress that's been paralyzed for years, can make decisions on many things. They're not really helping him. But he's been asked to memorialize the 34th President of the United States, Dwight D. Eisenhower. The commission he heads has 12 members, 4 senators, 4 representatives, and 4 presidential appointees. Carl is a retired Air Force Brigadier General and organizes the work of the commission. He's a fellow Rotarian. He joined Rotary in Colorado Springs, belonged to the downtown D.C. club. He's a Russian specialist, of course, and who rediscovered Eisenhower because as a military officer he was disappointed with the lack of national leadership at the end of the Cold War. Carl is here today to tell us about the work of his commission and to share a few thoughts about America's greatest public servant of the 20th century, General and President Dwight D. Eisenhower. Please welcome General Carl Riddel.
It's indeed a privilege not only to be here. I've become, over the years, very fond of Colorado. As a military family, we came to make Colorado home. Being born in the far eastern plains of western Nebraska, I feel like I haven't moved very much. Here I am back in Colorado. But to be here this morning, to breathe that good mountain air, to familiarize myself again with the congeniality of places further west is indeed inspiring. So I want to thank President Jim for giving me the opportunity to speak to his club, and I want to thank your Executive Director, Darlene Mass, for her care and patience in trying to arrange things at a distance. Not easy to do, even though we have the advantages of all this modern technology. Mindful of the fact that I had not many minutes in which to speak to you, and President Jim, it looks to me like maybe I've got 20 plus, and would like to leave some time for some question and answers. But as I came out here, I thought about how to say a lot in a brief period of time, and I realized that it would be helpful to leave some documents with you. So I can tell you that the brochure on your table, if you take an interest in it, was prepared by the best specialists in the world on Eisenhower. Thousands of hours of effort to pick those very simple words which describe to you the achievements and contributions of the general, the president, and the world citizen. And for you as Rotarians, I would think the world citizen would be an interesting dimension of whom we are speaking. Also in this brochure is information on how to contact us. I should be very clear about my role. My role is that of a staff officer. It is to help my 12 bosses, 4 senators, 4 members of the House, 4 presidential appointees, to make their very best decisions about this great American. There is also at your table something that I thought as I came out here, I was thinking about the fact that there are multiple constituencies that I'd call Eisenhower constituencies. Kansas, of course, likes to take pride of ownership of its favorite son, but congressmen from Texas have told me don't forget Denison where he was born, and of course Pennsylvania with the Eisenhower farm at Gettysburg is mindful of the president in retirement, let alone the young officer at Camp Cody in Gettysburg. But there is also very definitely a Colorado constituency. So on your table also is a single sheet of paper where I had jotted down just a few thoughts on Eisenhower and the state of Colorado. And some of the points in there may be of some interest to you. And lastly, there is at your table a postcard, which if you decide Eisenhower is worth memorializing, you might send it to your congressman or woman and take advantage of that fact. This will be a 3-part presentation. First of all, I feel an obligation to you as my fellow Americans to inform you about the design of the Eisenhower Memorial. I don't know how much you know about it, and you may or may not know anything. So I'd like to begin with a few images. Before we go to the first design image, I'd like to make a few comments about what you see on the screen here. The single most iconic photograph of Eisenhower is here, Eisenhower speaking to the 101st Airborne on the eve of their invasion in Normandy. And that event was a world-changing event. And Eisenhower goes down in history as the supreme commander of the Allied forces in World War II. That is probably the single most recognized photograph of any in the world, and it was given to the designer of the memorial as part of the inspiration. The designer of the memorial, by federal law, Public Law 10679, was told he had to memorialize the Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces in World War II and the 34th President of the United States. We provided this photograph, less well known. The original hangs in the Australian National Museum. This was by Joseph Karsh, the Canadian photographer. To me, it's a very special photograph because it speaks to Eisenhower as arguably the most international of all American presidents, a dimension of Eisenhower I'd only come to appreciate as I began work for this commission. What I'd like to do now is briefly walk you through the design of the memorial, and if we'd go to the next slide. This is the Capitol of the United States. This is the National Mall. The Eisenhower Memorial will be located down from the Capitol on Maryland Avenue on a 4-acre rectangle called Eisenhower Square. That square will become an urban park. It's now something of a concrete jungle, become an urban park within which sits the Eisenhower Memorial. So the Eisenhower Memorial is not on the mall, it's across the street from the National Mall. Next slide, please. The site is a very complicated architectural problem. 8 lanes of traffic on Independence Avenue, 4 lanes of traffic here, 4 lanes of traffic here. Irregular building lines bleeding away from this central square. How does one organize such a site and give it identity? The designer was told it had to be green and it had to be accessible. He gave this complex site definition by putting a large urban park in place with extensive landscaping and then putting columns with a traditional tapestry on them created out of stainless steel reflecting the landscape of the heartland. Within that park then sits the Eisenhower Memorial. If you were to go to the top of the National Air and Space Museum and look down on the site, you would see then this green urban park in the center of which is the Eisenhower Memorial. The site is surrounded by institutions related to Ike. Who creates the Department of Education? Eisenhower creates it, which is located right here. Eisenhower creates the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. So you have education here, health and human services over here. Who is it that regulates air travel in the United States? Over on this side, you have the FAA building. Who is it that takes America into space? Who creates NASA? It's Eisenhower. Here you have the National Air and Space Museum. Who is it that moves the Voice of America studios down to the end of this building in 1954? It's Eisenhower. And to have this memorial close to the Capitol, as opposed to the White House, which was the second to the last of the 26 sites that the Commission looked at, is especially appropriate because of all Americans, Eisenhower had profound and extraordinary respect for the authority of people and the Congress of the United States. So here in the center of this green space is the recognition and celebration of the general, evocative of that iconic photograph, bas-reliefs in the back of the Normandy invasion, quotations from Eisenhower on that invasion. Over here, still in the process of evolution, is a design of the president and his cabinet behind him. We move to the next slide, please. This is what you have as a close-up of the general. It's significant that you don't put the general by himself. What you see here are 9-foot heroic-size bronze statues. Many military leaders are known for their singular qualities. Eisenhower's unique approach to leadership, both in and out of uniform, was special in its approach to consensus, teamwork, and the successful inspiration of those that followed him. when he speaks to this collection of paratroopers before they are due to jump, one should remain mindful at that point he is in personal command of 3 million people. 3 million people from all those diverse nations and military units, a truly extraordinary role in history. Next, please. Here you see the current evolution of the design of the president, a man in uniform, and then 2 civilians. Eisenhower was a critical figure in the last century in the determination of the role between the military and the civilians in this great democracy. He and General Marshall set the high standards for criteria about how the military should relate to the civilians. And that set of statuary carries that dimension in part because you did not see Eisenhower in uniform as president. You didn't see Eisenhower rendering salutes as president. You didn't see Eisenhower putting on combat gear as president. He was very mindful of who he was as the civilian president of the United States and his role symbolically and actually in that regard. And at one point he said, I at this point must be the most unpopular United States Army general, because he's still at the 5-star rank, because of the anger of his fellow officers in the Army. And we won't even begin to talk about his problems with the Navy and with the Air Force because of his approach to national security. Please. So here you have this beautiful framed view of the dome of the Capitol. It is breathtaking when you're on the site. The most recent design revisions have broadened this view up Maryland Avenue to the Capitol of the United States. We've tried to capture the breathtaking dimension of that view of the dome, but it's very difficult to do. When you visit the site, even without the memorial there, just look for that dome. It's very special. Please. Can you believe that the Department of Education still lacks an engaging public entrance? The whole world comes to our shores for education. It's one of our great strategic strengths, and yet the public does not have access. When this memorial was to be done, the designer was told you have to be respectful of being in front of a cabinet-level department. And what the designer has done is created a 70-foot promenade between these columns, the tapestry, and the Department of Education to offer exhibit and access space. The Department of Education is thrilled that we've helped them solve that problem. Please. The diversity of Eisenhower's legacy is extraordinary. So we have approached it with a sense of trying to capture its major elements. And what you see here are what we call the 7 pivotal moments in his life, chronologically going to West Point, finding its way through the different points, D-Day and so forth. We are dealing with these dimensions of the memorialization and legacy in an electronic format. Eisenhower's military record was exceptional, and people tend to stovepipe that. Eisenhower as president was interesting and unique, each of them deserving of their own particular attention. But when you put the two of them together within that one citizen, that one man from Middle America, then you have something truly extraordinary. And so we are using this device to betray that magic. Here you have, if you go to our website, which is on the brochure at your table, this is what you'd bring up for the D-Day pivotal moment. And if you come to the, please, the next one. If you come to the site, you will not be punching buttons. You will not be looking at screens. You will hold up your digital device. It will read a code, and you will either hear the speech or have an elaboration. So you can visit the site electronically before you come. You can prepare your visit electronically before you come, and when you're there, you can elaborate however you wish on the site. Please. I'm going to leave this up as I continue a few comments. I'd like to make a few comments about Eisenhower himself before we turn to perhaps an opportunity for a few questions and at the grace and forgiveness of our club president. You might imagine spent a lot of time thinking about who Eisenhower is. And so I'm going to jump to the core of my insights. My intelligence operation is basically to have put myself in touch with the world's leading specialists on Eisenhower. I exploit them shamelessly in the cause of learning the truth about this man. Let me share with you two of the leading insights that I have on Eisenhower. He was an extraordinarily complex man psychologically, far more so than I ever realized. He is not, in his essence, this avuncular, smiling, very simple character personality. It's layer upon layer upon layer of conflicting tensions within the whole of his life. The second thing I'll share with you is I knew he was an intelligent man. I didn't know how intelligent he was and how hard he worked to mask his intelligence. I've learned, of course, that he read Clausewitz 3 times. You never hear Eisenhower say, I read Clausewitz. I can't tell you how many officers I've known that are very proud to tell you they've read Clausewitz. Just once. With that in mind, this complex, highly intelligent man then ends up being one of the great figures in the world. How does that happen? And I've decided that it in part is a function of paradox in his life and the tensions engendered by those paradoxes and how he wrestled with those paradoxes for the whole of the life. And what I'm saying to you here, I'm reducing from what could be hours of presentation to some simple points. Let me suggest one or two of the paradoxes. How is it that a young man not leaving Kansas before he's 20 years old, that's how old he was when he left for West Point. This isn't a wet behind the ear teenager such as I've come to know at the Air Force Academy. How is it that 20-year young man becomes one of the great internationalists of the world? And when I say great internationalists, I mean really understanding internationalism. I'll never forget the first Rotary president I heard say, you know, Eisenhower said that the greatest force for peace in the world after the United Nations is Rotary International. That's Eisenhower. Who is it that founds people to people? Eisenhower. Who is it that establishes sister cities? Eisenhower. I could go on with that argument in part because we've just finished an article for publication on Ike, the American internationalist. Paradox. How did that happen? You've met Rotarians. How did they become internationalists? How did this young lad from Kansas become that international figure? Secondly, let me pick another dimension of this man. This man was born on the wrong side of the tracks, no advantage of family, name, no advantage of any money. In fact, quite the contrary. As he put it, we were poor and didn't know it. How did an individual like that, from very ordinary circumstances, common education, how did he become comfortable in the halls of the world's power? Walking with a Churchill, a de Gaulle, a Bernard Montgomery, a General Patton, I could go on with the list. When he becomes president of the United States, no other leader in American history had had so many personal relationships with world leaders at the time. And Eisenhower was verifiably at the time not only the most popular man in the United States, but in the world. He is on the cover of Time magazine 18 different times. Second time he was Man of the Year was following his 11-nation visit over 19 days throughout the world. People showed up, not in the hundreds, not in the thousands, but in the millions. When he and Nehru walked up to the podium in New Delhi, they said Eisenhower was visibly shaken. There's a man who's seen a lot. Why was he shaken? As far as the eye could see, not thousands, millions of people. There was no way they could see him, let alone hear him. And they were there for him. And there you have this great American general doing what? Talking to the disciples of Gandhi about peace. Now, if that doesn't send a chill down your spine about what this country has represented to the world, I'm not sure what will. Well, let me pick another element of paradox. This general, this man who commands 3 million people, caused immense death and destruction in his whole lifetime, was overseeing the development of unparalleled nuclear and thermonuclear power. This man who had seen the expansion of military power far beyond the bounds of anything that history had seen to that point. How does he come to entitle his memoirs Waging Peace? How does he come to be that passionate advocate as our commander-in-chief and as our president? Talk about paradox. I've given you just 3 of the paradoxes. No, Eisenhower was a modest man, but he was not a humble man. Eisenhower was one of the most self-confident people I have ever encountered in trying to study military history. The humble Supreme Commander of the Allied forces in World War II saved me. He knew what humility was, as he put it. No man who has benefited from the blood and the sacrifices of his comrades and friends should be anything but humble. But Eisenhower was supremely self-confident. He was a modest man. Let me leave you with just a couple references. The infrastructure of this country, not only the highway system, not only regulated air travel, not only access to the seas of the world with the creation of the St. Lawrence Seaway. Who is it that gives us civilian control of space? It isn't just a highway system, it's all of what I just told you. That was Eisenhower. Takes to his deathbed the secret of having created the reconnaissance intelligence system from space to ensure there wouldn't be another Pearl Harbor. As late as 1992, while I'm wearing a uniform, I couldn't have said National Reconnaissance Office to you. Eisenhower took that to his grave. I've talked with the chief historian of the National Reconnaissance Office. I know in detail how Eisenhower masked that and did that. So immense achievement. And the last and the personal reason why I support Eisenhower is because as an American military guy, I came slowly in these different international contexts to realize I was part of a great experiment. Every day that I get up, walk out on the stage of my life, I'm participating in an experiment. There's only one left, one great continentally based experiment in human destiny. That's in the North American continent. The one in Eurasia went terribly awry. So the one that's left in the North American continent, and every day we're part of the test of what that means. Well, one of the best pieces of evidence that I know as a model and as a method to balance security and freedom and all of these tensions I'm talking about, one of the best pieces of evidence we have that this American experiment can work is Dwight David Eisenhower. This is the farthest west we will have nationally memorialized an American president. We've crossed the Mississippi. We were as far as Springfield, Illinois with Lincoln. Now we're out in the heartland. I think Colorado has a stake in this memorial. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carl. We have time for just maybe a couple of questions, and then I would ask the rest of you to come up afterwards if you have further questions. So we have one right back here. Melissa?
Hi. Thank you so much for being here. Can you speak at all to the controversy between the family and the design and how that's being resolved, or if it's resolved?
Okay, let me make a few comments about the Eisenhower family and the design of the memorial. The Eisenhower family, when we began the memorial, consisted of John Eisenhower, the president's son, who just passed away this last year. He was buried in April the 17th at West Point. That leaves the 4 grandchildren, David Eisenhower, the grandson, and then the 3 sisters, Susan, Anne, and Mary Jean. David Eisenhower served as our commissioner for over 10 years. He served as our commissioner until December 2011. At that time, Susan and Anne, his 2 sisters, said that they took exception to the design of the memorial. One of their major exceptions, they do not like the depiction of the heartland of America on this tapestry. They believe it diminishes his greatness. I was with the designer and Susan and Anne in New York when the designer discussed this with him. As a result of their concerns, they said he was being too modest about their grandfather's achievements. He took what had been bas relief representations of the general and the president and he pulled them out of the bas-relief and created these heroic-sized bronze statues. So he has continued to modify the memorial in light of their criticism, but as David put it to me very directly, he said, "Carl, I will not be in public dispute with my sisters." David voted for the design that you see here. David was part of the selection process. I'll leave it up to you to judge family dynamics. I happen to be the oldest of 6 children, so I'm familiar with family dynamics.
Yes, General, you were head of the history department at the Air Force Academy. The site for the Air Force Academy was selected when Eisenhower was president. I've heard conflicting stories about whether Eisenhower had any, influenced that decision. To what extent did he influence the decision for the site of the Air Force Academy?
You know, Eisenhower, I'm grinning and I'm smiling because I've spent a good bit of time trying to sort that out a bit myself. And there was a huge competition in the United States over where that should be. And if you go to the library in Abilene, they've kept all of those, they've got all the letters that came in and trying to affect the process this way and that way. Eisenhower, at the end of World War II, while he was Chief of Staff of the Army, was brought in by the Secretary of Defense to recast the military training and education. And it was partially because they had created this new Air Force and they didn't know how they were going to provide the leaders. So they didn't know what to do. Should we take them out of West Point? Should we take them out of Annapolis? We don't think there ought to be another academy. That was their original view. And so as they were trying to work that out through time, why Eisenhower was brought into that process. So that started when he was Chief of Staff of the Army. He made recommendations about how it could be approached, most of which were accepted. Then later he becomes the president of Columbia University. While he's president of Columbia University, then he is made the vice chairman of a board to sort this out. And in that role, he's at the same time doing all sorts of other things for the president and the Secretary of Defense. So he's in that role. He becomes convinced that there should be an Air Force Academy. Eisenhower was very interesting. You presented enough data, you presented the right arguments, he would change his mind. Not easily, but you could change his mind. So he decided there should be another academy. So then very quietly, while he is President of the United States, he ensures that the process continues. I feel a little bit it was like what I'm doing today with his memorial. He quietly sees that the process continues so that it will finally get done. And it does happen then, but it happens apart from him as president. Eisenhower was a master of masking his engagement in matters like this. He would put the pieces in place, try to get the right people picked, and then stand back from the process. Or if he did anything, you'd never find the fingerprints. So when he came to the Air Force Academy to celebrate the naming of the golf course after Eisenhower, a reporter asked him that question. You know, did you have anything to do with the selection of, Colorado Springs as the site? And Eisenhower grinned and said, "Of course not. But they knew what I wanted."
Carl, before you leave, let's give him another round of applause. Brigadier General Riddel. We have just a couple of gifts for you as well. First of all, this represents our annual fundraising award dinner named after Branch Rickey, the Major League Baseball manager who signed Jackie Robinson and broke the color barrier. We thought you'd like one of those baseballs representing that. And then finally, representing Rotary's commitment to international goodwill is that, as you probably know, we are this close to ending polio, and Rotary plays a very significant role in that. In your honor, we're going to donate from our foundation enough funds to be matched by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation in total to inoculate 150 children against polio. So we want to thank you very much for being here. Grant, thank you for having the General here as well. We really enjoyed your talk. I have one last question. What's the best book to read if we wanted to learn about Ike?
If you want to read the single best historical portrait, that is the general and the president, the whole package together, you'll still go back to Stephen Ambrose's book. And it's available in paper. It's still in print. It's flawed. He gets civil rights completely wrong. There's some other things that are wrong with the portrait, but it is an effective portrait where you have the general and the president. By that I mean you may not like the portrait that's got the ear wrong or the nose wrong, but it may be a very effective overall portrait. That's what Ambrose's book is. I'd recommend it if you haven't read anything else. Thank you.
Thank you so much.